Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And I'm Tyler Osby.
And today we're going to talk a little more about the Nintendo Entertainment System, as well as Howard Phillips and 3 influential Nintendo games from 1987. Tyler, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. So
polite.
Here we are in what is called the New Empire. Oh, I should say, we are on chapter 20 of...
Oh, yes, very good. I forgot.
The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent. If you would like to follow along, the book is like $5 on Kindle. Super worth it. It's great, and I love it.
It's great, and we love it, and there's a fun picture section in the middle.
Yep.
I like pictures.
It has some spoilers about the book, though, because it covers everything the book does.
Oh, yeah.
So
be careful. Watch those pictures mindfully.
Don't spoil video game history for yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so I'm going to set the scene of what we call the New Empire.
Paint a picture for me with your words, Tyler.
It's Christmas.
Ooh.
1986.
Beautiful.
So the NES exists in sort of limited quantities. It's in several different markets now. They're doing a pretty good job. The NES right now is the number one pick of children who are surveyed about the season's toys. So you put it up against the Furby of the day, Teddy Ruxpin, who we've talked about, the Tickle Me Elmo of the day.
Get out of here, Elmo.
Yeah. All the kids want the NES.
Well, it's beautiful. That's why. It comes with a little robot.
Yep.
Rob.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Nintendo, at this point in time, they made their own little news segment about the NES that they sent to a lot of different TV shows across the country, TV stations across the country. So kids knew what the NES was, but adults and their parents didn't really know. What do adults and parents watch? The news.
They love the news.
They love the news. So, in order to get the parents on board, they produced this news segment that they sent to TV stations, and they were like, please air this news segment. So the TV news anchors in one area, in an attempt to be hip and cool, they pronounced Nintendo as Nintendo.
I love this part.
And they thought that Rob would like bring you drinks and stuff. They're like, oh, it's a robot, it's your friend, it's going to bring you stuff from the fridge.
That's like way high. That's way more complex than a normal robot.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
The time.
They acted like they knew what they were talking about. They didn't know anything about
I thought
what
it was Rosie
about.
from the Jetsons.
Yeah. But that's okay. That's all right. Nintendo is on the rise. In 1988, they had sold more than $1.7 billion worth of Nintendo gear.
Whoa.
So they were rolling in it. It was a good time. Now, with anything that becomes popular, there's a little bit of controversy. Some controversy surrounding the NES. And every time really a video game thing becomes popular, or any time a thing becomes popular amongst kids, there's some controversy. Some parents think it's the devil, right? At this point in time, Japanese influence in American business was really starting to pick up. So they were sort of like just selling a lot of stuff in the United States. And Nintendo accounted for 10% of America's trade deficit with Japan.
Just Nintendo.
Yeah, that's just crazy. Nintendo is 10% of what Japan is selling to the United States.
Good for Nintendo.
Yeah. 10% of the difference between what the United States sells to Japan and what Japan sells to the United States. So we bought more from Japan than they bought from us. That's what trade deficit is.
That's good, because I needed that explanation, because I was mildly confused.
So they were 10% of that. Some Americans were starting to become not okay with all of the Japanese influence in American business. Parents were complaining that Nintendo was taking over their children's lives and making them physically unfit in the summertime. There was a group called Families for Peace that protested outside Nintendo's headquarters during the 1987 holiday season. They thought Nintendo was shipping war toys because you got the Zapper gun, which I believe was still gray at this time, so it still really looked like a gun. Most of the games were shooting games of like shoot aliens or shoot the thing or like pew, 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 right?
Fun games is what you mean?
Yeah, games that were fun, basically. And Families for Peace was anti-fun.
I'm here to roast a protest group from 1987. They don't exist anymore, but I don't care.
So Nintendo kind of had a little bit of a PR problem. They didn't have this problem in Japan, which was kind of weird. So RoccoW, he didn't really know how to deal with it. He was like, this isn't really a problem in Japan. What do we do? So Howard Lincoln, not to be confused with Howard Phillips that we mentioned earlier, Howard Lincoln, he only knew how to deal with it like legally. He was like, well, what we're doing is not illegal, so we're fine, right?
And he's the vice president of legal affairs, I think, for Nintendo at the time, right?
Yeah. So they hired a PR firm to help out with their images. They bought a whole bunch of Christmas trees and put them out in front of Nintendo's building. They kind of wanted to soften their image at this point in time. So there's all kinds of Christmas trees out in front of the building. They knew that this Families for Peace protest was probably going to get on the news and get some cameras on there. So they put some like white sheets over their logo because they're like, we don't really need the logo being out there with these protests going on at the same time.
It's really smart.
Yeah, so they didn't want their name to be associated with this when the news segments aired. So, yeah, that's an example of what was going on at the time. People thought that maybe video games were not so great.
Those people are wrong.
Yep, those people are definitely wrong. Now I want to talk a little bit about Howard Phillips.
Howard Phillips.
Are you familiar with Howard Phillips?
I am not familiar with Howard Phillips.
So Howard Phillips
Until now, I read the thing. But yeah.
Yeah.
I did my homework, Tyler, I swear.
Great. So Howard Phillips is, he started at Nintendo working in New York, helping kind of unload like Donkey Kong arcade machines at like the warehouse docks, right? He unloaded something like 60,000 arcade cabinets himself.
He's so cool.
Yeah, over the course of however long. And he distributed them throughout New York. Yeah, if you have seen a Donkey Kong arcade cabinets at some point, chances are Howard Phillips had touched that, which is pretty neat. So he started in the warehouse and he worked his way up. He was very good at video games and they sort of realized this and they used him as this like sounding board for like, hey, we're bringing this game over from Japan. Are people in the United States going to like this? And he'd be like, yeah, they're going to like it, or you got to change this kind of thing about it, or whatever, you know. And he would kind of help them tailor games for the U.S.
He was
market.
a diplomat.
He was a diplomat, indeed. So he kind of tested games for them. He's the main reason that the Nintendo knitting machine never was brought to the U.S.
This is a Nintendo knitting machine?
Yeah, so Nintendo wanted to make a knitting machine that would teach people how to knit, and he was like,
I would actually want to do that. That sounds fun.
Yeah. He was like, nah, dude, I don't think we need this. He used to do like sales pitches for these kinds of things. So he would like take them to the stores, like this game or that game or this piece of hardware or whatever. And when he did normally he was like super animated, like really excited about whatever he was pitching. And the knitting machine, he was just like not excited about. And it was like very obvious to the people he pitched it to. So like they ended up not selling that in the US, which is probably a pretty good idea.
I mean, I don't know how to knit, so maybe it wasn't a great idea.
Yeah. Well, maybe not. I also don't know how to knit. Maybe I would know how to knit. Maybe we'd have a whole generation of knitters.
An American millennial knitting generation?
Yeah. We'd have something to do with all our free time. Let's not play video games, I guess.
Just knit each other's sweaters? Yeah.
So he kind of rose. He eventually became the sort of like spokesman for Nintendo because he was like he's pretty charismatic. He was a nice guy. He was really good at video games and he loved talking about video games, like if being this video game evangelist.
You know who he sounds like to me? Tyler Osby.
Very similar. We're very similar people.
You're the Howard Phillips of video game history podcasting.
That's right. I think.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to use my knitting machine I just bought?
As you brought it over from Japan?
Yeah.
Yes, I would. I would love to learn how to knit. He's also the reason they never brought the Japanese Super Mario Brothers 2 over to the US. They did bring it over later in Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo called The Lost Levels.
I never played this, The Lost Levels. I remember seeing it on All-Stars.
Yeah, it's because they're super hard.
Wait, is that the one with the bottle, like beaker, that you throw on the ground and the doorways appear? Or is that Super Mario Brothers 3?
No, that's Super Mario Brothers 2. So the Super Mario Brothers 2 that's in the United States is a completely different game from the one that released in Japan. Okay, so in Japan, they released Super Mario Brothers 2, and it was basically just the same thing as Super Mario Brothers 1.
Yeah.
The levels were way harder, and it was just like, in general, just like more expanded on the original, but it was still basically the original game again. And when Howard Phillips played it, he was like, this is way too hard. People are not going to like this. Mm-hmm. And so they just never released it in the United States. What they did do for Super Mario Brothers 2 in the United States was they took another game that we could do a whole episode on this whole saga, but there's another game in Japan called Doki Doki Panic.
That's right. And they reskinned it with Mario characters.
Yeah. And they made that Super Mario Brothers 2.
They didn't change the dodo, which is what that's from, the egg shooting bird, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the dodo?
Birdo.
Birdo.
Yeah.
Is there something called the dodo? Well, there's a real bird called the dodo.
Yeah. And is also dead, much like the NES these days. Ooh, rip. Yeah, so Doki Doki Panic was brought over here, Super Mario Brothers 2. That went over a bit better than Lost Levels probably would have. Super Mario Brothers 2 is a very weird and different game.
I remember playing it. It was weird.
Yeah, it's super weird, but it's still fun. It's great.
Yeah.
And people didn't really know what to expect out of video game sequels at the time. So it was like, oh, it's completely different. That's fine.
You could like ride the eggs that Birdo shoots and then pick them up in midair. And the physics were very confusing, but it was great. Fun game.
Yeah. So they did eventually release Super Mario Brothers 2 in Japan as Super Mario Brothers USA.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Mario's trip to the US.
Mario's trip to the US, yes. And so Lost Levels eventually became part of the Super Nintendo collection, Super Mario All-Stars, which had all 3 Super Mario Brothers games plus the Lost Levels. Pretty cool. Howard Phillips also wrote columns for Nintendo Power, and he even starred in a comic strip in Nintendo Power. He was a part of the duo Howard and Nestor. Nestor was a little bit more popular because he was like an actual character, but Howard Phillips was in Nintendo Power.
He was in the comic?
Yeah, he was in the comic.
That's cool. Do you think he had to like approve everything that they had his characters say?
I don't know, but I know I'm pretty sure he was the editor-in-chief of the
so he saw
magazine,
it anyway.
So he saw it. Yeah, he knew what was up.
Like,
he wrote columns. He was big into Nintendo.
Like, I don't want my comic book character endorsing this knitting machine. He's still on it. He's still so mad about this knitting machine.
Yeah. He left Nintendo in 1991, presumably after Nintendo wanted to bring out the knitting machine again. They're like, we think we've got a real hit on our hands. And Howard Phillips was like, no, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
That's probably not why he left. But yeah, so he'd later go on to work at a bunch of different places. He'd work at like JVC and Microsoft and THQ. He worked in the Xbox division at Microsoft. He was kind of a consultant that he just did that for a while. He was a pretty cool dude. So anyway, Howard Phillips, pretty neat. He had a lot of influence on the early Nintendo games that came out in the US because he was either greenlighting them or, giving advice on whether or not they should sell at all, or making changes to them, helping them become better games for the United States market. So Howard Phillips was a neat dude.
I'm looking up Howard Phillips right now. I want to know what his face looks like.
Yeah, he looks like a really nice guy. He's got like his dress shirt and a bow tie. He made bow ties cool. Bow ties cool.
He did it before Bill Nye?
Before Bill Nye, before the 11th Doctor.
Before Alton Brown?
Before Alton Brown.
He looks real cool, actually.
Before Steve Urkel. Actually, probably not before Steve Urkel.
Yeah, it might have been the same time as Steve Urkel.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing. I like this guy. Oh, there's comics. There's a little, like, Nestor and Howard comics just on Google Images. Just Google Howard Phillips Nintendo, everybody, and you can look up the comics.
Yeah. He was in his own comics. Pretty sweet.
Good for him.
At this point in time, Nintendo still had the problem of how they were going to fight the image that video games were dead. Because in a lot of people's minds, especially adults' minds, video games were totally dead. Atari was gone. Why are we doing this video game thing again?
Stupid adults.
So even though Nintendo was doing fine, they still hadn't convinced folks that they wouldn't be just another Atari. Some parents didn't want to buy the NES because they were like, what if it just crashes again? This is not a good investment. Nintendo knew, and we've talked about this in the past, especially with Nintendo's like security system that they have on the NES, but I'll give you another little refresher here. Like the biggest reason that Atari failed was bad games. So Nintendo had to figure out a way to avoid bad games. Howard Lincoln made a pamphlet called The Facts About Video Games, where he laid out all the reasons that old consoles were doomed to be bad, but the Nintendo was going to stick around. He had 4 points in his pamphlet: limited graphics and in depth of play. So games looked bad and they sucked, is basically what he said.
They didn't have enough to do, yeah.
Yeah. He said they played at their best only in arcades. So if you had a home console, you were getting the watered down, crappy version of whatever game you were trying to play. They were restricted to too few colors, so games couldn't be bright and colorful like Super Mario Brothers. They were also constrained by poor audio qualities and limited sound effects. And so basically he's saying the NES is more powerful than any of these other systems that failed, and that's why we're not going to fail, which is actually not a great reasoning if you ask me, because there were plenty of consoles that came out later that were also better than the Atari 2600, and they also failed. And I don't think it was because they had bad graphics. It was because the games were bad.
Yeah.
Games not fun.
Gotta have fun games.
Yeah, and you gotta have a way to sift through the crappy games. Like, it's okay if there's a whole pile of crappy games, but you gotta have a way of telling which ones are the good ones.
Don't release those.
Right. So either don't release them or come up with some way to mark those or something like that. So Nintendo wanted to present an image that they had analyzed Atari's mistakes and would not make them again. This was both helped and hindered by the fact that most of their sales team was Atari executives. So on the one hand, you could say, well, these guys know what they did wrong, so they can do it. On the other hand, these are the people that messed it up before. Yeah. Why are you giving them another chance?
I don't know if we should do this.
So it's probably 50-50 there. We talked about the security system of the NES a couple systems back, but this is what enabled Nintendo to really have a tight grasp on the software that was made for the NES and to make sure that bad or buggy software never saw the light of day.
This was the chip, right?
Yeah, the chip that made it so only Nintendo could make cartridges that ran on the NES, and then they would license those out to their licensing partners, and they had a whole bunch of rules. They were like, your game can't be this, can't be this, can't be this. You can't make more than 5 of them in a year, and they have to be exclusive to the NES for at least 2 years before you release them on another platform. So they kind of had an iron grip on their publishing strategy.
Total control,
which was probably the right choice given that if they were able to bring back the video game market and make it as big as it was when the Atari was around, you would probably get all those shovelware games coming back again if anybody could make games for the NES. So Nintendo keeping their grasp on this was probably the right thing to do. It did cause them a little bit of grief with companies like Activision and Electronic Arts, who were big publishers that were making games for the PC. Where they didn't have any sort of restrictions like that at all. So they were like, let's see how this plays out, because we're big enough that we don't want to have these restrictions placed on us. So they kind of sat on the sidelines, and these restrictions would later get relaxed later on in the NES's life and in the Super Nintendo's life as well. But Nintendo also correctly identified that it was all about first-party games. A few years later in 1994, when the 3DO launched, Howard Lincoln said, yeah, he's not worried about it because 3DO had no games.
3DO had no games.
That's right. 3DO didn't make their own games. And so he was like, this is stupid. Why would anybody buy this if the company's not even making games for it? And he's pretty right. 3DO had no games and nobody bought it.
Oh, Howard. Both Howards in this episode are really crushing it.
Yeah, they are.
Good job, Howards.
Yep.
A tale of two Howards.
Tale of two Howards. I wonder if either of them were ever called Howie.
Howie?
Howie.
I don't know if anyone goes by Howie except for Howie Mandel. And I think that's the way it should be.
Probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to start calling you Tylee, though. Isn't that okay?
Isn't there a Howie in the Backstreet Boys?
Oh, yeah.
So he was two Howies.
He was like the silent, quiet one.
Yeah.
With like the 5 o'clock shadow beard and the ponytail.
Yeah.
Don't ask me how I know that.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. Backstreet Boys wouldn't be around till 95, 96.
Was there a Backstreet Boys video game?
I don't think so.
Okay, we're going to look this up and we'll regroup in the next episode and let you guys know about this.
There's a Backstreet Boys.
This is very important to me right now.
Yeah.
I know
it's called Quit Playing Games with My Heart.
Quit playing games with my hard drive.
Hey.
Hey-o.
Nice. Yeah.
They probably turned it off just now. Yeah, Moonwalker is the game I was thinking
Michael
of.
Jackson, yeah. Because he did a lot of music for the Genesis, including Sonic the Hedgehog 3. We'll get there.
There is a Moonwalker arcade machine at Button Mash in LA, which is a barcade.
Oh, so, wow. We should have checked that out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I played it a little bit. I died. It was fun, though.
Yeah.
It's like Turtles in Time style fighting, but with cool dance moves. Yeah.
Yeah. Aerosmith had a game, too, where you shot CDs and things.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So.
Tangents.
Arcades at this point in time were also collapsing. They did a little bit better than home consoles did, but they eventually sort of saw their end as well. So for context, the original Donkey Kong sold 60,000 units when it launched. It's a pretty big deal. Donkey Kong Jr. sold half that in 1982, and then Donkey Kong 3 only sold 5,000 units in 1983.
Wasn't Donkey Kong 3 kind of a turd of a game, though? It was like a Space Invaders knockoff, right? That's what they said in the book.
Yeah, it was not great. And Donkey Kong Jr. was, I don't know. I haven't played either of them, so.
They just kind of slowly over time degraded.
Yeah, so the arcades had collapsed as well. Nintendo made the Versus system in 1983, which was pretty cool. In theory, it had 2 screens, and so it allowed you to play against somebody.
Ooh.
It had some competitive play going on there, which was pretty neat. They later would replace their Versus systems with a system called the Play Choice 10. They did this in 1987, which had 10 games built in. You got to choose which game you wanted to play. They were all mostly modified NES games, but what was really cool about this and what Nintendo liked to use them for was they would test games out. So they would make a new game, they would bring it and put it in these Play Choice 10 machines, and then based on how many people played them or the feedback they got on that, they could then make changes to a game or decide how they wanted to do it when it came time to actually release the game for the NES.
Nintendo, you're so smart.
Yeah. Pretty cool. I do remember Silverwood theme park in Idaho. Mm-hmm. Just kind of out in the boonies. I've
never been.
You've never been to Silverwood?
I've never been. Let's go.
Oh yeah, dude.
Right now.
Let's just hop in the car and go to Silverwood. Mm-hmm. So for those of you from the, I want to say Pacific Northwest, but not really, Eastern Washington State, Idaho, which is probably a very small, maybe even 0 of you are from there. But there's a theme park called Silverwood. It's pretty cool. They have an area where they serve pizza, and they have a versus machine there. At least they did last time I was there. It was like Super Mario Brothers versus. So that's all I know about that machine is I played Super Mario Brothers in an arcade, and I thought this was crazy.
I would now that I know about these, I'm going to keep an eye out for them when I go to arcades.
Yeah.
Try to find me a Play Choice 10 machine.
Yeah, pretty cool. So in 1987, though, the NES had games. I want to talk about 3 specific games. These are the games that are listed in the book.
I don't know if we can like play these in the background, so I'm just going to start singing them. Dun, dun, da, 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 da.
The first game I want to talk about, The Legend of Zelda. Oh man, I could do a whole episode on Legend of Zelda. We could do a whole series on Legend of Zelda.
Should.
Just the history of each game. Like we could go really in depth there. I could
see us when we're done doing the general timeline, going game by game, I think Zelda would be one of the first ones we did.
Yeah, we could do an episode on the series as a whole. We could do a whole series of episodes on the history of Zelda. Oh man, I get excited.
Big fan of Zelda, the two of us.
Yes, huge. This game was made by Shigeru Miyamoto.
Hero of video games.
That's right. Shigeru Miyamoto. Am I right? Creator of Donkey Kong.
He just dropped a microphone, if you guys didn't know. Just a spare. We have it around.
Yeah, we just keep... There's the microphone we have. We just drop. It's pretty beat up now because we drop it a lot.
Yeah, it was broken to begin with, but...
So Shigeru Miyamoto. This is the same guy who created Donkey Kong. Same guy who created Super Mario Brothers. Oh, man. What a luminary of video game.
Ooh, good word choice.
I hope I used that word right.
What a prodigy.
What a prodigy. What a maestro.
Ooh.
of video games. Shigeru Miyamoto makes good games. Zelda is one of them. This game is in a completely different genre from Donkey Kong or from Super Mario Brothers. It's like an action top-down. You know what? You guys have all played Zelda. If you're interested in a podcast by a video game history, you've probably played Zelda. Y'all know what it's about. Here's the TLDR, though, or too long didn't read, too long didn't listen.
TLDL.
The TLDL here.
TRL. That's not right.
Yeah.
I'm Carson Daly.
You are an elf boy who needs to get the missing pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom. That is just one piece of the Triforce. So there's also the piece of power, which is the one Ganon has. There's a piece of courage, which is held by... Well, I don't want to spoil.
You don't have to spoil it. Just say it's held by probably a monster in probably a dungeon.
Right, probably. But maybe not, but probably. So you venture through 8 different dungeons, and you can kind of do them out of order, but you do kind of need items from one to finish other ones, so there's sort of an optimal order to do them in. But as you go through these dungeons, you gain power and items along the way, and once you have all of the things that you need, all of the different pieces of these Triforce, you can go take on Ganon. Final Showdown. It's a long game. This is a game that took... like 10 hours to like really get the hang of, which is something they were really worried about when they first launched it. They were like, I don't know if people are going to want to play this game. It's so hard to get into because, people have short attention spans, and most of the games they played up until this point was like, oh yeah, you're Mario, you run and you jump on stuff, and like as you get better, you make it further, but the concept is pretty simple. Zelda was a little bit tougher. It was also the first home video game with a battery-backed save file.
Ooh, this is exciting.
Because the game was so long, you couldn't beat it in one sitting. So you had to save your progress. And in order to save your progress, you needed some sort of flash memory that you could write this to. And back in those days, flash memory that didn't require a power source to hold what it had was super expensive, so they'd put a battery in there. That's what it means by battery-backed. And those batteries lasted about 10 years, which is pretty good, although most of those cartridges probably have dead batteries now. They're actually pretty easy to replace. I think if you pop the cartridge open, it's like a watch battery. You can just like put a new one in there. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Most games at the time that had like progress that you would want to save would use like a password system.
I hated this system.
Yeah, it's bad. But it's the best they had, and it didn't require battery saves. But Zelda was a little bit different. Because there's just so much stuff to keep track of that a password system would probably be just so long and undecipherable that it just like it would turn people away. But also, it had been originally developed for the Famicom disk system, which came out in Japan, did not come out over here. In a disk system where you're storing these things magnetically on magnetic tape, you don't need a battery to back things up, so you don't have to do passwords. You can just store your save on the disk. And so the game had already been made with this style of storage in mind and not passwords. So when they brought it to the US, they were like, well, we got to figure out a way to do these saves. I guess we'll throw a battery in here and we'll do some flash memory.
Japan gets all the cool stuff this time.
Yeah. The disk drive was pretty sweet. That's also where Super Mario Brothers 2 came out on the disk drive as well.
Ooh.
Not for any particular reason. I think they were just really pushing this disk drive.
Look at this disk drive. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neato. So yeah, that's pretty cool. First game with like save files. It held 3 characters, so you could have 3 people could save their progress.
3 brothers.
3 brothers, that's right, or sisters.
Or sisters.
Yep.
Or friends.
Or mom and dad and the kid.
Mom, dad, and kid's a good combo because it means your parents are spending time with you.
That's right.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Grandma can get in there.
Yep.
The dog.
The dog, if you want.
She chews the controller while it's on.
It also had like a second quest. If you named your character Zelda, you got a whole different set of dungeons and stuff in that game.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's a
cool.
whole different game?
Yeah. I mean, it's still the same general idea, but the dungeons are all different. You can do them. I think they're in a slightly different order. Some of the secrets are different. It's like, it's a new game.
You said to name your character Zelda.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a really cool feature.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. What's pretty cool about it, it came in a shiny gold cartridge.
Yeah, I had it.
Yeah.
I was telling Tyler before we started. I had the shiny gold cartridge from an auction as a kid because I feel like a church auction is how you got most Nintendos as a kid. That's what happened to me.
They were pretty big in the 90s.
Yeah, we got a lot of that stuff going on.
Yeah, so Zelda would have a gold cartridge. Zelda 2 on the NES would have a gold cartridge. And then Ocarina of Time would also have a gold cartridge for the pre-orders. I really want one of those gold cartridge Ocarina of Times.
If you guys have a gold cartridge Ocarina of Time,
I would like to buy it from you.
Tyler would purchase it from you with hugs.
That's right.
And money. But if you wanted hugs, he'd give you that too.
You'd have to come to LA.
Because you'd be doing him a big favor.
Yeah, I really want one of those.
Mm-hmm. And I want Tyler to be happy, so I'll give you a hug and money too.
Wow.
Yeah.
This will turn out to be a really good deal for
Yeah,
those.
if you guys have that gold cartridge, ooh.
You're getting hugs all day. Yeah. Or not. If you don't want hugs, like I would not.
You might get more money.
Yeah, I would definitely not want to force a hug on you.
That's right.
But I would definitely buy it from you. Okay, anyway, now that my want to buy post is
out
done,
in the world.
Is out in the world. People are going to listen to this like 10 years later. Like, I wonder if you ever got that gold cartridge.
And then it turns out you got 150 of them. And they line your walls. It's like you put one wall and just cover it with gold cartridges.
Just my wallpaper is gold cartridge Zeldas. Zelda was also the largest NES game at the time. Just in terms of like data usage on the cartridge, it was just the biggest, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so because RoccoW was so worried that people wouldn't like how complex the game was, he included a big old instruction manual, tell you about everything in the game. They included a big, huge map so you would always know where you were. And he started up an 800 number, like a toll-free line. They're like, if you had trouble with this game, you could call this line and somebody would pick up and you could say, I don't know how to get the bow and arrow. And they could tell you how to get the bow and arrow. And it was free.
That's really cool.
Yeah, he was really worried about it.
Can we go on a little side story real quick? I did this with Tomb Raider 3.
You called the line?
I called the line with Tomb Raider 3, but they charged me for it. It cost my mom like $5, and it took me that call to realize that I got a game that was like bugged out.
Oh no.
Like at this one point in the first dungeon of Tomb Raider where I'm in a temple, this Shiva statue is supposed to come alive and I'm supposed to fight it like a boss, would not come alive no matter what I did. And they're like, it's supposed to come alive. And I'm like, it's not. And they're like, oh, well, you might have gotten a messed up copy then. Sorry. And that was it. They didn't like offer anything. Yeah, because they were not a part of the company.
Yeah.
They were like a third-party contractor, I'm guessing, that you call in and give you help.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's my only experience with a non-toll-free number. I was a kid. I was really upset. I was so bummed out. I didn't understand.
I would be too.
I got really bummed out. And I felt bad for making my mom like spend her money for me to call a phone number to be like, your game's broken.
We're not going to do anything about it, but it's broken.
She's okay with it now. I'll go buy her lunch or something. And I'll be like, this is for that non-toll-free number.
Yeah. They started the line with like 6 people, I want to say. And then eventually, not because the game was so hard, but because it was so popular, they had to expand it to like 200 people to man the phones and help gamers.
Well, didn't they also get calls not related to this game? Like, there's other games too.
Yeah, so soon people started calling and they would ask about other games. And so they sort of expanded this enterprise to encompass a lot of other Nintendo games. Howard Phillips, of course, being the person who led that effort. Because he was so good at games, he could teach other people.
And because he's just the best.
Because he's just great.
2 Howards.
Yeah, the 2 Howards.
I will say,
Howies.
I miss an instruction manual in game. Like now, like if you get like Skyrim, they'll still have the map in there for you, but you don't see instruction manuals anymore because of the internet.
Yeah.
It's just like, go to this website.
Man, I used to love, like you get a game and you'd be sitting on the car ride home. You just open it up and you pull out that instruction manual. You start reading the story.
It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best thing in the world. I found with my N64, I saved the booklets. I have the booklets.
I have a lot of my booklets,
I don't have the boxes, but I have the booklets still.
Yeah.
Which is exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty...
Take a little trip down memory lane, read Pod Racer's instruction manual.
as you're going home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While driving. Just kidding. It's too dangerous.
They eventually did have to make this toll-free number not a toll number, I want to say, but they were like, you're going to have to pay your long distance. Like, we're not going to pay for this anymore. They kind of... Because it just started being too costly because it was so popular. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. The next game I want to talk about, that's Zelda. We could talk about Zelda forever and ever and ever.
Literally all day.
Yeah, and we probably will when the time comes. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is another one that the book mentions.
This has a cool theme song, too.
Yeah.
It's like... Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. That's the theme song for it.
I was going to let you go for as long as you
I
wanted
could
to.
go pretty long because there was another podcast that used to do a segment on professional wrestling, and they would play that song in the background. And I'm like, this is so cool. And it was my friend's podcast. And I'm like, what is that? He's like, oh, it's the Mike Tyson's Punch-Out theme. I'm like, what a cool... That theme and then Guile's theme from Street Fighter are two of my favorite video game theme musics.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Musics? Sure.
Why not? So Punch-Out, not Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Punch-Out,
Just Punch-Out.
had been an arcade game. People would play, and you had it was like, it looked like it was a fighting game, and that's what it looked like from the outside. But really what it was kind of a puzzle game, because you had to know what your opponent was doing, what their moves could be. Each of the opponents had like a different set of moves and like different tells to know when to hit them and when they were weak and like when to dodge and stuff like that. So it was really more of a puzzle game and a reaction game based on what you saw on the screen.
That's good to know, because I've never played this game.
Yeah,
I've never played it. I remember watching people play it and not really getting it. So that's good to know. It's just like puzzles.
Yeah, it's kind of a puzzle thing sort of wrapped in the guise of being a boxing game. So the goal is, of course, to beat up your opponent or whatever. But it was more of a puzzle game. So Punch-Out, not Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, was an arcade game. When they wanted to bring it to the NES, they had this idea that they were going to have Mike Tyson endorse it. And this was actually, there's a couple of like things with this game that are fortunate and then unfortunate. So the fortunate thing was when RoccoW was at CES one year, he went and saw Mike Tyson fight, and he saw Mike Tyson win because he was undefeated at the time. And he was like, this guy's really good. We should get him to endorse a game for us, or to be a game for us. And they had already made Punch-Out, or they were working on Punch-Out, and he went to them and was like, this is perfect. Let's make it Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And this was before he was the heavyweight champion of the world. So they paid him something like $50,000.
It's a rumored theory, but
Right,
they don't know how much. They don't know the official amount. But
Right, but something like $50,000 for 3 years, and he would be like the Punch-Out guy, right? So then he won the heavyweight title, and that just worked out really well for Nintendo, because they probably would have had to pay a lot more for that if they had made this deal later. So that's pretty cool. Then later on, Mike Tyson would become embroiled in several scandals.
A lot of scandal, yeah.
Yeah, things with abusing his wife, and among other things, the guy ends up going to jail, and it doesn't work out for Nintendo. So they actually, after the 3 years were up, they sort of silently scrubbed his name from the cartridge, and they put Mr. Dream in as the final boss instead of Mike Tyson.
I wonder if they changed the player model, or if it just says Mr. Dream and he looks like Mike Tyson.
I don't know. They probably changed it.
Yeah,
I would imagine they would. Yeah. If you go on eBay, you can find, there's like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. If you're looking for this game, there's Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. You can also find a regular Punch-Out for NES. That they're the same game, but the last boss is different when it's not Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. So I looked up those. I don't know if there's a big disparity in the rarity of them. I would imagine non-Mike Tyson's is rarer because it probably didn't sell as well, and it was like later after the game had already kind of run its course and been popular, you know? So anyway, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. That's a game that was pretty cool.
Oh, Mr. Dream looks very different.
Does he?
Mr. Dream looks like, I don't know who he really looks like. He just looks like a really tall, like, military dude, I guess.
Oh.
Like,
That's weird.
kind of very Captain America-y, I guess.
It's weird that his name is Mr. Dream.
Yeah, I don't get that. But yeah, he says his record is 99-0 with 99 knockouts.
Oh, jeez.
He's so good.
Never lost.
Never lost a match.
Never lost till he fought you, kid.
Wait, was Mario the referee in this game?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, Mario used to make all kinds of like cameos in Nintendo games, like golf. I think you might even play as Mario in golf.
Mario Golf?
Yeah, in tennis, he's the referee, I think, too. No, not Mario Golf, just golf for the NES.
Oh.
I think you play as, I don't know, if you find a screenshot, it'll say it. You might play as him. Maybe he's a referee. He's a referee in tennis for the NES as well.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And he's on the cover of it, too. It's clearly him on the cover of it.
Yeah. So he made all kinds of cameos.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Good for Mario, getting more work done.
Just getting all in there. The last game I want to talk about from 1987, all three of these games we're talking about are from 1987. That's kind of why we're covering them here, is Metroid.
Oh, yeah. I do not know the theme song off the top of my head for this one. I feel like I should. Was that it?
Something like that. I don't know. It's very ominous. It's not really very melodic.
It's scary.
It's pretty scary, yeah. There's like the spawning music when Samus first comes down the thing, like da na 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 na.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really melodic. Good singing voice, Tyler.
Thanks.
You have to read your note exactly as it's put under Metroid for me real quick.
Samus, woo!
Thank you.
Yeah. I love Samus. I love Metroid. I really love my personal favorite is Metroid Prime. That
was the GameCube one, right?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite games of all time.
And that was first-person shooter.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Anyway, in Metroid, you play as Samus Aran, a bounty hunter in space. She gets sent to a planet to solve the mystery of the Metroids, which are this like alien being that sort of sucks the brains out of things. I'm not really 100% sure what they're bad, man.
But
they
I mean,
just
if
sort of
aliens,
take over.
There's a good chance they suck your brain out of your head.
Yeah, they take over. They end up going to planets, taking over, and just overrunning everything. So we gotta stop them. So yeah, I say she because although she wore a helmet throughout the entire game and really could have been anything, a man, woman, or robot, you don't really know through the whole game. They chose to make her female, which I think is pretty cool, very progressive. You don't know this until the end of the game. After you beat the last boss, she takes off her helmet, and it's very clearly female. Or I guess it could be a man with long hair. I don't know, but
yeah. She's a lady.
She's a lady. The instruction manual for Metroid does not refer to her as a she. It refers to her as a he, which I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think it's like a translation error from the Japanese version, which used gender-neutral pronouns when describing Samus. They just didn't do that also, and they just made him a he.
They translated it bad?
They just translated it poorly, yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty cool. I love... The first Metroid's great. The remake for it on Game Boy Advance, Metroid Zero Mission, is probably the best version of that game. It's so good. Metroid 2 is really good on Game Boy. They remade that for the 3DS, which you should check out because I know you just got a 2DS.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Metroid Samus Returns is really good.
Ooh, I'll play that.
Yeah, super fun. Metroid 3, also known as Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo, is widely regarded as one of the greatest games ever made. Metroid 4, also known as Metroid Fusion, was on Game Boy Advance, which is also super good. Metroid Prime series, well, the first Metroid Prime in particular is like my favorite GameCube game.
That was GameCube.
Yeah.
And 2 and 3 are good, though?
Yeah, I haven't actually played them that much. I think I burned myself out on the first one, and when I played the second one, I was like, you know what, maybe I'm done with this for a while, and I
remember watching a demo of Metroid Prime and being very impressed graphically at the time. Like, it looks good. So good.
The droplets, like, that fall on her visor, and like when something flashes in front of your face like a bright light, you can see her reflection on the inside of the visor, and like that stuff was mind-blowing back in 2002.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, that game is really, really great. And it's so weird because Metroid follows this formula of like, you are going through this sort of labyrinthine world. You're going by things that you can see, but you can't get to. You're like, oh, I really want that missile upgrade, whatever, and I can't get to it. But you know that later on, after you beat a boss, you're going to get a power that powers you up and you'll be able to come back to that area. Large part of Metroid is backtracking to old areas and finding out what secrets you can find there with your new gear, which is really fun. Metroid Prime did that perfectly, but just from a first-person perspective. So it looks like a very different game at the outset, but it's actually very, very much a Metroid game. And it has the best music of any GameCube game by far.
I want to play that game. You're talking it up again, Tyler.
Yeah.
You do this. You talk about games. You get all excited about them.
It's
and
really
I want to play them.
There's, assuming you own a legal copy of the game, because we do not endorse piracy, there is a emulator for the GameCube called a Dolphin emulator. And if you can get a copy of Metroid Prime and play it in Dolphin emulator, that's the best way to play it because you can like crank up the graphics and stuff. It's really good. It's awesome. Yeah, I highly recommend.
A little life
Metroid
pro
Prime.
tip from Tyler Osby, everybody.
Only play games that you legally own in emulators. Don't download things illegally.
Yeah.
But
good. I like that we're doing this, for lawful ways of playing video games.
Emulation is not illegal, as decided by Bleem versus Sony.
Ooh.
Actually, Connectix versus Sony.
We'll probably get there at some point.
Yeah, we probably will. Yeah. So
we're going to leave off there, right?
that's where we're leaving
Metroid.
off. Metroid.
So we got
This is only
Punch-Out, Metroid, Zelda.
Yeah. This is only the first half of this chapter. This is a pretty meaty chapter of the ultimate history of video games. So
Next week, I'll come back with the second half of it, team.
can't wait.
I'm all done with my allergies. I feel alive.
You feel great.
I feel
Mike,
good.
what have you been playing?
Ooh, you introed it this time.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Destiny 2 has a little thing called Solstice of Heroes come out, and I am not a big video game grinder, and I have been grinding.
Oh, yeah?
Let me tell you what, because they really sell this whole idea that when you get the legendary armor, you get 400 level.
Which is as high as it goes right now.
Which is the best way for me to power level my dude, so Tyler and I can play all the stuff together, all the activities. So that's what I'm working on. But my PC's been broken, so I've been doing it on Xbox.
Yeah. Well, once
Trying to
you
get that
your...
shirt.
Oh, yeah. That's a big thing. You got to get that shirt.
I want to get once I do the Xbox stuff to get the shirt, get enough points. So if you don't know, listener, how this works is you get triumph points for doing certain things in the game. When you get 250 of those triumph points, you're able to get a t-shirt. Well, they give you a coupon code because last time they did it, it was a $14,000 t-shirt. And then they'd give you a coupon code to make it $20. And I'm assuming they're doing the same thing this time. And I really want the shirt. It's like a fun thing. And I wear my shirt. One time I wore my Destiny 1 Age of Triumph shirt to Jumbo's Clown Room, which is kind of like, it's not really a strip club. It's more like just like a ladies dancing in bikinis bar. It's like classic LA. Like it's an institution in LA. And the bouncer was like, dude, you play Destiny? And I was like, yeah, man. And we talked about Destiny, just ignoring everything going on around us. We just talked about Destiny for like 10 minutes, me and the bouncer guy.
Love it.
It was awesome.
And you can only get the shirt if you did the things. That's what's so cool about it.
Yeah, it's like you earn it.
Yeah.
And it's a real life thing that you have. And I wear this shirt going, yeah, I did this.
Yeah.
And I'm really cool. And then people are like, sure, man.
Wow. Great.
Great. And like, can you just go through the rest of the drive-through now? Because I tell everyone in drive-throughs that I do that.
Yeah. The most important part is you don't wait for people to come up to you and say, hey, that's a really cool shirt. Make sure you tell everyone,
like,
hey, I got this shirt from Age of Triumph.
Age of Triumph. I am triumphant.
It is I, the triumphant guardian.
But now you're making me think, oh, geez, what did I just knock
I
over?
just dropped a pen.
Just dropped a pen? That's okay. We're all okay. I want to probably get now another 2DS game, and I might get that Metroid game.
Metroid's pretty good, dude.
I think that's on my list. I haven't really touched Mass Effect that much because this Triumph thing started, and then I've been all about that.
Yeah, you gotta get that 400 armor.
But I'm really, really enjoying it so far. It's like a good grind. It doesn't feel so bad. Especially it's a grind that you're meant to play with friends, and it's a lot better.
Yeah, and they give you the whole month to do it. Other grinds they've had have been like this, like cram everything into a week, and if you're not playing so much during this week, you just miss the thing.
Yeah, and I would just miss the thing because I don't have time.
Yeah. But this one is like, it's a pretty decent grind, but they give you the whole month to do it. So if you've got like, there's 1 week where you really have tons of free time, you can just grind it all out then and not have to worry about making time every week to do it.
I looked up a thing and it said the typical person can get the full set, including Masterwork armor, in about 15 hours. But the Masterwork is like 4 hours of that because the Masterworks, you have to like prestige Leviathan and do all this stuff. So
I'll try for it, but I'm not going to.
yeah, I really just want to get it 400 legendary. So
yeah.
But yeah, I've been doing that. What have you been playing?
I've been playing that too, as well, and some World of Warcraft. I really haven't changed that much from last week. Like, still playing some World of Warcraft, still playing just other games. Like, that's about it. Actually, not other games.
I really just can't wait to go get the RAM that just got shipped to my house so I can make my PC again.
Oh yeah, you had bad RAM, huh?
I had bad RAM in my PC. It was causing games to just shut down, specifically Destiny, just telling me I had like an error and I had to scan the install, and then the install was like, everything's like ship shop shape here. Is that it? Ship shop shape?
Ship shop shape?
Ship. Chirp. I don't know. But yeah, it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
So we've been kind of just on that Destiny train, I guess. Nothing new. But thank you all so much for listening. Next week, we will go more into a little bit of Nintendo. I believe Sega pops up a little bit in the end of Chapter 20 as well.
Yeah, dude.
Maybe some early console war kind of stuff, but not the Genesis Nintendo. The Genesis SNES, which is the big one.
Right. The most, the largest console war, the most combative, violent.
Not a Cold War, a very hot console war.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that next week. As always, I am on Twitter at @mecoletta, and Tyler's on Twitter at SneakerElf, ELPH.
Mm-hmm.
You can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We're on the Podaholics Network. They have other cool stuff there. Thank you so much to you who've given us ratings and reviews on iTunes or Stitcher. It means the world to us. We would love to have more, and we'd also love for you to tell your friends about the podcast because we don't do any advertising, and we feel like we got a good thing going on here. Just a nice, fun thing. And we appreciate the tweets and emails. If you do that, it makes us feel very nice.
Yeah. Love talking to people.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.